everyone.
Taking one for the team, you know?
We can get started. Give everybody a chance to settle. Anybody here from Commissioner Nelson? All right. I imagine he's on his way. We shall find out. So, call this meeting to order. Ceremonies will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. Invocation, Commissioner Flynn.
We are in the middle of a very cold winter, and I know we all want to warm up. And, you know, Phil at the beginning of the month told us spring was 6 weeks away, so I just have a little cute poem to say for everyone to remember it's going to get sunny soon. I like February for the hints that winter is going away. He seems to whisper in my ear that soon the birds will sing and play. He tells me to get ready, for warmer days are on the way.
Very nice, thank you. All righty. Bonnie, roll call, if you please.
McAllister. Here. Flynn.
Here.
Walter. Here. Spence. Here. Henschel.
I'm here.
Nelson.
Early here.
Andrews. Here. Morris. Here. Seifert.
Here. Fantastic. So the approval of the minutes. Take a motion.
Motion to approve the minutes from the February 5th and February 12th meetings.
Second.
All right, motion by Walter, second by Flynn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? There we go, moving right along. I believe we're at first public comment.
Any person shall be permitted to address a meeting of the Board of Commissioners which is required to be open to the public under the provisions of the Michigan Open Meetings Act. Public comment shall be carried out in accordance with the following board rules and procedures. Any person wishing to address the board may state his or her name and township or district. Providing a specific address is not recommended. Persons may address the board on matters or issues which are relevant and germane to county government as determined by the chairperson. No person shall be allowed to speak more than once on the same matter, excluding time needed to answer commissioners' questions, if any. The chairperson shall control the amount of time each person shall be allowed to speak, which shall not exceed 3 minutes. The chairperson may, at his or her discretion, allow an additional opportunity or time to speak if determined germane and necessary to the discussion. Public comment will be solicited during the 2 public comment periods noted in Rule 5.4, Order of Business. However, public comment may be received during the meeting when a specific agenda topic is scheduled for discussion by the board. Prior to the first public comment, the chairperson will indicate the topics on the agenda for which the public comment will be accepted. Members of the public wishing to comment should raise their hand or pass a note to the clerk in order to be recognized and shall not address the board until called upon by the chairperson. The board shall not comment or respond to a person who is addressing the board. Silence or non-response from the board should not be interpreted as disinterest or disagreement by the board. Please be respectful and refrain from personal or political attacks.
Thank you. So seeing that you're standing there, you don't need to pass a note. Raise your hand.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for your time. So my name is Connor Miller. I am a Garfield Township resident, but I am also employed at Aspire North Realtors, which is located in the city of Traverse City. So first, I would just like to thank the Grand Traverse County Health Department and the Grand Traverse County Commission, who have been very communicative with our association throughout the process of drafting the Grand Traverse County on-site wastewater and sewage disposal regulation that's under consideration today. So we are grateful for this opportunity our association has had as well to serve on the ad hoc committee that reviewed drafts of this regulation. And we have appreciated the willingness of both the Grand Traverse County Health Department and the Grand Traverse County Commission to consider our input in drafting this regulation. Honestly, it has truly been a collaborative process and one that I've been proud to be a part of. So I just, with the assistance of our members of our association's Public Policy Committee and members with many years of experience working on septic policy at a local and state level, our association reviewed this latest draft of the regulation. We identified some areas for improvement to increase transparency, support greater compliance, and provide greater efficiency. Earlier this morning, I emailed the Grand Traverse County Commission and representatives of the Grand Traverse County Health Department our full detailed list of edits. I also have printouts of those that are available for the commissioners if you'd like those during this meeting. Be happy to provide those. But we ask that you consider incorporating our Aspire North. We ask that you consider incorporating our suggestions and points of clarification before any potential adoption of this regulation. These edits reflect the thoughtful input of our members' experience with local septic regulations across our region and supports progress toward our association's greater goal of a statewide septic code for Michigan. Some of these items include a publicly available map of properties that are required to be compliant if transferred, a clarification of timeframes for completion of department actions, a public listing of certified inspectors, including a range of pricing for their inspection services to drive competition in the best interest of consumers. And also an allowance for financial options like the Michigan Save Septic Replacement Loan Program that fund the correction of substantially non-compliant systems without creating burdensome economic hardships. So thank you again for the continued opportunity to work with you to put in place the on-site wastewater and sewage disposal regulation to best serve Grand Traverse County now and into the future. We're excited to continue these efforts forward, and thank you in advance for your consideration. Thank you.
Thanks, Connor. You can give those to Bonnie, because I know she's going to want one. Thank you very much. Anyone else for public comment?
Good morning. My name is Jeff Shaw. I'm the Elmwood Township Supervisor. I'm also Chairman of the Board of Public Works. After having a conversation with Commissioner Nelson at our last meeting, it occurred to me that we haven't been great at communicating with you guys. And so I'd like to change that. We have a new director coming on board in April. One of his priorities is to do exactly that, to communicate better with you guys. So having said that, I would like to, on behalf of the Board of Public Works, I'd like to say thank you for you guys giving us the opportunity to participate in Project Alpha. Unfortunately for us, the timing just isn't great. You know, we're trying to figure out how we move forward in the interim till we have our new director on board. So I wanted to say thank you, and I'm sorry that the timing isn't great for us. I also wanted to say thanks to Chris and Nate for their presentations. Also wanted to say thanks to Nate and Donna in HR. I've become a bit of a thorn in their side, I think, through this process. When our director passed away, suddenly somebody had to pick up the ball, and that ended up being me. So thank you also to Dean Bott, because he's been real helpful in working through some things. So I do want to apologize. I'm not going to stay for your whole meeting. Commissioner Nelson has heard my shtick a bunch of times. I'm going to head back to Elmwood Township, where it's always sunny and 70. So I also wanted to say, in the interim, if you guys ever have agenda items or would like any input from me or from any members of the Board of Public Work, or certainly from our new director, we're more than happy to do that. So again, thank you for everything you do. In the world today, in the climate we have, it's not easy doing what you guys do. So thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. All righty, no more public comment. Once, twice gone. Going to have approval of the agenda. Motion?
Motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
All right, motion by Flynn, second by McAllister. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Fantastic. 6, moving on to the consent calendar.
The purpose of the consent calendar is to expedite business by grouping non-controversial items together to be dealt with by one commission motion without discussion. Any member of the commission staff or the public may ask that any item on the consent calendar be removed and placed elsewhere on the agenda for full discussion. Such requests will be automatically respected. If any item is not removed from the consent calendar, the action noted, receive and file, or approval, is approved by a single commission action adopting the consent calendar. A, receive. Number 1, Department of Health and Human Services, Pavilion's December 2024 Board Meeting Minutes. Number 2, MEDC Semi-Annual Program Report. Number 3, Grand Traverse Conservation District January 2025 Report. Number 4, Expenditure Report. Number 5, ARPA Status Report. Number 6, Board of Public Works January 2025 Meeting Minutes. B, Approvals. Number 1, City Appointment to Brownfield Redevelopment Authority. Number 2, County Treasurer Appointments. Number 3, Materials Management Planning Committee Recommended Members. Number 4, Emergency Management Promulgation of Continuity of Government for 2024-2025. Number 5, Materials Management Planning Committee Bylaw Amendments. Number 6, Grand Traverse Sheriff's Office Decommissioned Vehicles. Number 7, NCS Survey Questions, Updates to Custom Questions. Number 8, Purchase of Patrol Vehicles. Number 9, ARPA Funding Reimbursement Requests.
Thank you, Bonnie. Any items want to be removed from the consent calendar? Okay, I would like to remove A4.
Could you remove B2, please?
Yep.
Was that B2?
B as in boy, number 2.
Anyone else? Anything else? Fantastic. Entertain a motion.
Motion to approve the consent calendar with the exclusions just noted.
Support?
Sweet. So, motion by Andrews, support by Henschel. All those, that's not a roll call vote, is it?
Yes.
Thanks.
You remembered to ask.
I did. Getting there. It's like Lloyd and saying talk closer to the microphone. I'm just getting conditioned. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Flynn?
Yes.
Walter?
Yes.
Benz?
Yes.
Henschel?
Yes.
Nelson?
Yes.
Andrews?
Yes.
Morris?
Yes.
McAllister?
Yes.
Seifert?
Yes. Thank you. Motion carries. Right, special orders of business, we don't see any of that, so I guess we're gonna go items removed from the consent calendar. We'll start with A4, expenditure report. I have questions, obviously. Get back to where it was at. Mostly, I guess it's gonna be questions for you and Mr. Bott. I'm looking at this and I see a lot of IT stuff in here, and it occurs to me that I don't know exactly how much we spend on IT a year. And so, Mr. Bott, is it possible that I could get or we, the board, could get like a flow chart or something about the annual dollars in and out of the IT department, so we can get a grander idea of how much money is spent?
Absolutely. We have our IT and telecommunications are accounted for in a separate fund. It's Fund 636. There are 2 cost centers, and we do have budgets for both of those cost centers that are offset by revenues that are equal in amount. Those revenues are the fees that we charge the users to be on our telephone system and, for the use of their IT computers that you have in front of you today, your desktops, laptops, and the associated technology to support that infrastructure. But yes, I can provide that.
Thank you. Any more questions?
Could I just request that we see that over a period of time, maybe the last 3 or 4 years, so that we can see how it's fluctuated? I know we've spent some investment in singular projects as well as annual expenditures. So in my opinion, it would be helpful to see the bigger picture over time.
I agree, and I can do that.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. So I'll move that we accept and approve A4.
I
See.
support.
Go ahead. You gonna say something? Is that you? No. All right, good. That's a roll call vote as well, correct?
No.
No, it's
All
already
right.
been spent.
Like I'm swimming through mud today. All those in
Aye.
favor say aye. All those opposed? Fantastic, thank you, everyone. So we're gonna go to the, I guess, B2, so it was removed. Commissioner Henschel.
Yeah, so I was looking at the treasurer appointments, and these are mostly statutory. There's not really any other option, but it's just going through the motions. But I don't recall if we ever appointed Treasurer Callahan to the Hospital Finance Authority. I noticed the web page where we display the members of boards and committees is blank as to the members. So I just wanted to check if we should also add in the Hospital Finance Authority. I remember this is a special board that is nominated by the chairman and then approved by the board. I remember we passed on it last year at some point because the treasurer, there was a race, so we let the existing person just continue serving. I don't recall if we added the Treasurer Callahan. So I would just suggest we add, if the chairman would so advise, because he has to nominate the person. But traditionally, the Hospital Finance Authority is sat on by the treasurer. Mr.
All right.
Alger, do you remember?
I seem to remember that scenario, that we did not take action on it, but Mr. Callahan should be on that authority, I believe. I'd have to look to be sure, but
Well, let's table it until, let's be sure, and then we'll make it happen.
Okay.
Thank you for catching that.
Yep, and so I'll leave it to you, Mr. Chairman, because it is your authority to choose the person you want to appoint to that position. With that, I will move to approve the original recommended motion as presented.
Second.
Awesome. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Fantastic. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to go to 9, departmental items. 9A, Project Alpha update.
good morning, Commissioners. You have Jerry Tomzak, our owner's rep from Cunningham Limp, here to provide you with an update on Project Alpha. Good morning, Jerry.
Good morning, Commissioners. Good morning, Nate. To provide you with progress to date for Project Alpha in January, we completed the architectural site plan. We're going to refine a few things with regard to the OC 911 facility and the storage, since it was announced that DPW will not be participating in the storage facility. We did have some updated floor plans that we're going to also change and report to the committee next month, the commissioners. We excavated a buried sanitary manhole that was on the east side. We had to excavate it to determine what the depth of the pipe, we call it the invert, so we made sure that that was exposed for the surveyors to get the correct point. We're still continuing to hold bi-monthly meetings with Project Alpha committee members. We also had a meeting with Garfield Township, with the GT Metro Fire, and with the county building department. The intent was to orientate them on the project, let them know what's coming down the pipe, answer any questions they had. It was a good meeting. We also obtained quotes for soil borings. We want to know what the conditions of the soils where the proposed buildings will set. So I'll report those to Chris and Nate. I have the final numbers that I will give them later this week. So upcoming work will include doing the soil borings. We also want to test for the water infiltration. I know it sounds kind of strange in the middle of winter, but they can conduct a water infiltration so we can determine what the drainage capacity. We'll do underground storage or above ground retention, detention ponds, and we look at the saturation of the water, how fast it can get through the soils. We don't anticipate any issues. We have sandy conditions typically, so we'll have those to report. And then we'll update the schematic designs and then report to this commissioner, this body, the updated floor plans at the next meeting that we have. And we'll prepare the civil engineering drawings that Mega, which is monumental engineering, will be doing. Answer any questions you might have.
Fantastic questions. Mr. Andrews.
I don't know if this is a question for you or for administration. Obviously, your work is on the design and moving the project forward, but we have some obligation to figure out how we're going to pay for this. Do you anticipate that we will be in a position at the next meeting when we get that presentation to have some numbers and that we can start talking about what this looks like in terms of what are we bonding, what do we have the resources from 911, those sorts of questions, so we can start putting it in the context of how we're going to pay for it?
Yeah, so I think as soon as we know what the cost estimate is of the entire project, then we can start to feather through that. But we have options available to us. We have some cash on hand. We have the ability, we have an analysis actually from, I can't remember the attorney, but they believe that 80% of the 911 center can be paid for through surplus dollars. So that's good information to have, but certainly debt service is something that we're looking at for this and other projects that we may have. So bonding for the project and paying for that over the period of 30 to 30 years. is an
We're
option.
also doing grant scans right now, seeing what grant dollars are available, as well as I've reached out to officials with Office of USDA Rural. The site of these buildings are in the qualified census tract, and because of that, we may be able to access some type of special funding through the federal government.
How about funding for renewables and geothermal and those sorts of?
Yeah, that's part of the grant scan, and I've met with officials with Light and Power to understand, hear their perspective on what's available, either grants, incentives, rebates for full electrification of buildings.
And so when do we get an item, all that research you've been doing presented to us for consideration?
Hopefully soon. Hopefully March or April.
So I guess, I don't know about anyone else on the board, but it seems like if I were building a house, how big a house I build or what type of appliances I use might depend on what they cost, instead of designing the house and then finding out afterwards how much it costs, right? It seems like you make decisions based in part on the cost aspects of them. So it just seems like we should be getting to the, and maybe this is part of what you're presenting, if, what's the gold standard, what's the platinum version, what's the whatever. Options, so that we can make those cost-based decisions instead of just approving what's presented without, and then finding out that we've approved the platinum version instead of the.
Right.
Whatever.
Once we have the final schematic design, then we'll prepare the budget estimate, and we'll include what we call alternates, options that you might want to consider to either keep in the project, take out of the project, just different value engineering options that you would want to consider.
Both Partners in Architecture and Cunningham Limp are aware of the board's interest in having renewable energy being key to this project. We've talked about geothermal options, we've talked about electrification options, I should say, and they are aware of it, and they've incorporated that into their design work.
Jer, how's the water access going?
Oh,
That's a good question. We did discuss that briefly, and at this point, I know that the city and Garfield Township are still discussing how they're going to deal with it.
Okay, so it provides an opportunity in my mind, even though it might be a little more expensive. It's my understanding that the emergency management side of this is supposed to be, hey Greg, are you over there still? Could you come to the mic and answer my question for me? Sorry. If I attended those meetings, I could probably use the right vernacular. But it's my understanding that this is going to be a shelter of sorts where we can provide resources for folks, like say they're out of their house or something like that.
No, because it's a 24/7 911 and an emergency operations center, it has to be built to a standard that basically will withstand, actually the FEMA standard is a Category 3 tornado, 5 to 7 day power outage to start with. So it has to be built to a hardened, it's called a storm shelter capability, but it's for the essential function of the jobs to work, not a community storm shelter.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you brought up the 3 to 5 or 5 to 7 days without power. So I look at this as the grid goes down, we don't have power. If we don't have power, we don't have water. But if we're going to have our own backup generator, and now we're having issues that I'm sure that they're working out, the opportunity is maybe we should be driving a well. I know that there's some extra expense and different planning, but I'd like to see one of your alternate plans to be including driving a well as the primary source for water.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the expertise of Cunningham Limp and Partners in Architecture. They were particularly sought after because of their expertise in these critical infrastructure, essential function buildings. 911 centers and emergency operations center do categorize as one of the highest public safety critical infrastructure and essential functions in a government. So all of those standards are built within the construction standards. In fact, the hardened facility, how everything has to be done different than a normal commercial building, all of that is for that reason, to provide, one, redundancies, and two, have technologies and power options and utility options that provide those functions so that work continues to go.
Thank you, gentlemen, very much for your attendance today and for providing the report, Jerry. Thank you. Any more questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to 9B, Central Dispatch Rave Mobility Safety Software Suite.
Morning, everybody. I'm Corey LaCure. I'm the Deputy Director for 911. And you have before you it's kind of confusingly named. It's called Rave Mobile Safety. That's actually the parent company for something you might be a little bit more familiar with, and that is Smart 911. So Smart 911 is a system that we've had since 2013, I believe. And it is essential to certain vulnerable populations of the county. Right now, we have about 5,600 subscribers. So what is a subscriber? So this is a free service to anybody in the county. They can go to a website, sign up, create a safety profile there, and then that information is available for us if they call 911. So our system will recognize their phone number, and it'll pop up their safety profile. And you can put things on there like pre-existing conditions, medications, access information to get into your house, and then we can give that information over to first responders, the fire department, medics, whatever you have. And like I said, it's been a program we've had for a while, since 2013. We were the first early adopter in the state to go with this program. It's been successful. It's saved lives. One example is had a house fire in Peninsula Township. Well, a lot of people don't realize that 911 doesn't really have access to your location in the same way that we don't have access to your GPS data. And so the location can be a long ways away. And so this particular fire, this guy was showing up in the middle of East Bay. Well, it's hard to be on fire in the middle of East Bay, but we also had his Smart 911 profile that showed his address in Peninsula Township. We were able to send a fire department over there. Went directly to his house. It was a fully engulfed structure fire, and they were able to rescue him and save his life. So that's just one example. More recently, we've had just in the past couple of weeks, we've been getting phone calls that were bizarre, that we couldn't understand. Maybe somebody's prank calling or a child's playing with the phone. Well, it turns out it was a person who had a developmental disorder, and they were able to get a Smart 911 profile. So now, instead of guessing what exactly is going on and trying to figure this out, we have that information that pops up immediately, and that has been very helpful, not only to us, but the citizens who have this program. So we believe it's been successful. Like I said, we have thousands of subscribers. We want to do a campaign push to get more people to sign up for that, and that's something that we're planning on doing throughout the year, this year.
Fantastic. Any questions? Go ahead.
I've got a couple of questions. Since this is a software suite renewal, how does this intersect with the work that IT does, and just kind of understanding of how this works, since usually software updates come through IT, so I'm just
Right,
wondering.
it's a separate system. We actually have a separate server that just goes for this, and it's basically something that's looking for a subscriber's phone number to come in, and then it sends that information directly to our workstations in 911.
And then you said you have thousands of people currently on this, and so what's the goal for expansion there, and what's the plan for getting more people?
Yeah,
to know about
right
it?
now we have 5,696 subscribers in Grand Traverse County. We've had up to 9,000 in the past, and I want to get more buy-in. The problem is location information is so vital, so what you have to do is every 6 months you have to go in and renew your subscription, or else you don't show up on at all. And so we need to get out there and be educating the public. We've done some PR events, but I need to do more social media pushes and traditional media pushes to remind people, hey, you got to go in there and renew this, or else it goes away. So I'm hoping that we could get a little closer to that 9,000 peak number. I'd be happy with 7,500. But the big thing isn't that necessarily everybody has it. If everybody has it, it's great. But the most important thing is vulnerable populations, people that, for whatever, like for years I took a call from a a person who had some medical issues, but they also had a tracheotomy and they couldn't talk. So they would call 911, there would just be this open line. So it's so much easier if you have that information that pops up immediately, then you know, okay, I'm going to send EMS to this location immediately. I know what's going on. So vulnerable populations, especially senior citizens that might have pre-existing conditions, having all that quickly in front of us, I think, is the most important thing.
Commissioner Nelson.
So can you, since you have us here, can you tell us in the audience how to update your information on the Smart 911?
Yeah, so you go to smart911.com, and you sign in there with whatever your sign-in information was, and you just go through and say, yep, that's still my address, I still have all these conditions, here's my emergency contact, and then you just hit submit. I mean, for me, it takes about 30 seconds. I don't have a whole lot to update, pretty boring, but if you do have a lot of stuff you've gone through and move, it might take a little longer than that, but it's pretty easy.
I'll make the motion to support this.
Well, I'll second that. I'm sorry, did I take your thunder, Commissioner
No,
Flynn?
following up,
I
because
realize
you're
you
going down the same road I was. Smart 911 to create a new account,
Yep.
same .com.
Smart911.com. Yep.
Fabulous.
And it's based on your zip code and your address, honestly. But they recognize, okay, this is a Grand Traverse subscriber at that point, but it will work around the country. Any other 911 centers, which I believe is almost, I know it's the majority in the state of Michigan. If you happen to be in a car accident or something like that, they automatically get your information, even though you're outside of the county.
I'm gonna do that. Help get my mom to sign up today.
It's a great
Commissioner
idea.
Spence
Yeah,
and Commissioner
hey,
Henschel.
So do you get, once you sign up, does that give your medical history and anything that someone would need to know to triage you on site before taking you to an emergency room?
It only gives the information that you volunteer to share with 911. And then we can, in turn, take that information and share it with first responders if it's relevant information. So it only goes to 911, and then we ensure, if it's a medical thing, we would probably get that over to EMS through
Could
their
that
MDTs.
be offered to our corrections department on people who are being held at the jail so that they would have a better understanding of maybe what an inmate's health conditions are or health history if
Yeah.
they wanted to sign up for it?
So this is one of those strange things where we don't really have any HIPAA restrictions because it's during an emergency event that we're sharing this information. If it's not during an emergency event, then we wouldn't really be able to share that information.
Oh, I was just thinking because it seems like there's a disconnect at the jail with some of the inmates and they have to take them to the emergency room, and it's a lot of corrections officers who are being taken from the jail to have inmates, they don't know their medical history is what I'm getting at. So I thought maybe this would be beneficial and could be used that way, but no.
No, I don't see that would be a possibility. There would have to be some other system to go through that.
Okay. It's not a game changer. I just thought, oh, that'd be really nice if we could use that.
Yeah.
Commissioner, excuse me, Commissioner Henschel.
Yeah, you may have answered my question, but I'll just confirm. This is I'm thinking of our cybersecurity incident last year and the people's information that could be at risk if we had it on a local server, but is this indeed a cloud server that's maintaining this information?
Yeah, our on-site technology, like I said, it only sits there and looks for phone numbers, and then it hooks us up with the information that's housed through Rave Mobile Safety's cloud service.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any more questions? Roll call vote, please. Sorry, Bonnie.
Walter?
Yes.
Spence?
Yes.
Henschel?
Yes.
Nelson?
Yes.
Andrews?
Yes.
Morris?
Yes.
McAllister?
Yes.
Flynn?
Yes.
Seifert?
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you, everyone. 9C. Let's see. Damn, 934. I see Jim over there? I did.
Morning, Jim Baker, Director of Equalization and GIS. Before you today, we have a proposal to combine two separate GIS accounts together, make one account, and by doing so, we would greatly enhance the tools available to us through this process. I've worked with Larry at the Road Commission for 2.5 years. My team and I have worked with him for a long time in trying to move this forward. And the biggest thing that held us back was that our two single accounts combined were still less than this overarching proposal I have for you today. But based on recent asks and soon-to-be future asks and the Road Commission's needs, it makes financial sense. I worked through it with Dean and Chris to go to the one account. And the Road Commission has voted on this. They're in agreement with it. And so it would be the Road Commission's GIS, our GIS would have like joint ability within the one overarching account. Beyond that, I'd take some questions.
Any questions for Jim?
I'd move to approve as presented.
Second.
All right, so we got thank you, Jim.
Can I just ask a question?
Well,
Sorry,
sure.
that was too quick. How does the $69,000 cost would be shared with these other entities, correct?
So yeah, that is actually kind of like a second phase of this overarching process, is that instead of the GIS or equalization GIS bearing the cost share and the Road Commission bearing the cost share, what we did is we asked all our partners that currently use it and may soon come to use it, and we sat down and we prorated amount that each department would use. It's not quite as easy as IT, where you kind of count the computers and divide the number. We provide different services, and some of those services are more detailed than others. We provide the services to the building codes on which their whole online permitting system is based. And Bruce agreed, to partner with us on the cost of this and all the other partners that you see in that chart.
So does that mean that our share, the county's share, the 69,000 is, it looks like sort of everything minus 23,000?
I missed the last part of what you said.
69,600 minus 23,000, so 46,600?
Well, the building codes, I believe, is a different cost center. I mean, 911's a different cost center.
And I guess, yes, but they're still coming out of the county. To me, the only entity that's not somehow under a county umbrella is the Road Commission.
Yep, that is
Maybe
correct.
there's general fund versus the BPW fund or whatever, but.
Right.
And and this is a 3-year commitment?
Yes, this is a 3-year commitment. At the end of 3 years, maybe we look going to the cloud or not, I don't know. Currently, this will be an on-prem system, and the on-prem system we have in GIS, equalization GIS, will remain the same. The Road Commission, theirs will remain the same. The things we can do is now share some of what we have. We have an image server in which now the Road Commission can use it also, and some other things, vice versa. But
Is the Road Commission on board with a 3-year commitment at the 23,000 to you,
yes,
at least verbally?
they voted. No, they voted for that. Was it the 13th they had
Okay,
a meeting?
great.
I think it was.
Thursday.
That's great. Thank you.
It's on file as being approved by the Road Commission. We will actually get reimbursement for what we've paid already in our 2 little or smaller agreements. They will prorate what we haven't used of those smaller agreements, and that will go towards this larger agreement's first year's payment.
And do we need an updated agreement with the Road Commission to memorialize this arrangement?
Dean worked with Phil on that.
I talked to the Road Commission's finance manager, and currently for this 3-year agreement, he was fine with us invoicing them for their share of the cost. So After that, we may look at an agreement, but for now, they're comfortable with this, and they did appreciate the fact that they're going to have more capability, and that Jim reached out to them for that.
They currently pay $31,000 a year, and so it's going to help everybody by sharing and working together. I appreciate all the stakeholders that worked with me on this. It was a great team effort. I believe we tore some silos down and made some good progress.
Fantastic. So there's a motion on the floor, I believe.
I
but-
have a question.
My apologies, Mr.
okay.
Walter.
So can you speak, and maybe this is a Cliff question as well. I thought we were trying to transition everything to cloud-based and get away from the on-premise solutions, but it looks like, according to your memo, that was going to be not cost-effective, and you were going to maybe look at moving this after the 3-year agreement. So can you speak to why we're keeping it this way?
Sure, Cliff Dupuy IT. There are some applications that do not lend themselves well to cloud-based solutions. GIS is one of them because of the overhead with the software. Because GIS is multiple layers, and moving it to the cloud, from experience, would be a hot mess, be a lot of unhappy people. So that is one application that I would recommend. I would recommend we never. Well, at this point, with the current technology the way it is, I would not recommend ever looking at GIS moving to the cloud.
Okay, thank you. It just said in here it had to do with a cost issue and that you were going to look at it again in 3 years. So that's a little bit different than.
Yeah, cost would be astronomical because of all the infrastructure that's required for GIS to function to begin with. Building that up in the cloud would be cost prohibitive, but more importantly than all of that would be the performance issue would not be readily available to individuals, the departments, or anything.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Spence?
Yeah, thanks. And how about our collaboration with the townships? Because I've asked for shape files in the past from the county and the township. Seems like we really collaborate. So how does that work with the townships that are within Grand Traverse County?
So currently, all the townships except 2 have a contract with GIS to provide tax maps. And part of the reason we don't have the 2 is because we haven't actually had resources to get to where we can make that agreement and update their tax maps and make them more accurate and more sustainable with dimensions and things like that. So we're working to reach those last 2, but by and large, we perform a lot of services for the townships, and any of the zoning they try to do or some of the other things infrastructure-wise, DPW kind of wise, we provide the foundational layers that then they build their projects on.
Could they jump in on this cost sharing? Because I'm thinking about trails and sidewalks and parks and all that information. And
so we actually we have a cost schedule that's approved by the board in which we have to charge for some of our GIS services, and we give local units, governments, we give them kind of half cost. But there are times when there's a project and we will actually make an agreement that if we give them what they need to make their project and they give us back what they've made with it, then we don't charge them for that. And on a different note, down the road, I will approach the board and ask if we can make our GIS data an open source kind of data. We're not generating a lot of revenue with it, and I believe that it takes more staff time to prepare and send some of this than what we're receiving in the benefits. And if it was just an open source to where somebody could go and just take what they needed to do their project, that would be better for my office. But that's another ask down the road somewhere. But
sure. I'm a fan of Esri and GIS. I've used it, and it's really a powerful tool. I just wondered if some other people who are using it could be part of this cost sharing.
So the umbrella has to cover only the county is the way the licensing works. And it took a little bit of talking with Esri to consider the road commission and county GIS as the same entity, but they have, and that's how we've gotten it that far. But beyond that, we have to, stop the licenses and stuff. We can't hand out licenses and things like that.
I see.
Something beyond the county, but we certainly can share the data that we generate out of our system with anybody. And
Thank you.
Fantastic. Last call for questions. Pardon me, there's a motion by Hensel, second by McAllister. Bonnie, if you'd roll call vote, please.
Spence?
Yes.
Henschel?
Yes.
Nelson?
Yes.
Andrews?
Yes.
Morris?
Yes.
McAllister?
Yes.
Flynn?
Yes.
Walter?
Yes.
Seifert?
Yes. All right, thank you, everyone.
thank you for your support.
All right, 10A. Mr. Leahy.
I've been elected to go first.
Any drafted?
Brent Wheat, Grand Traverse County Environmental Health Director.
Good morning. Mike Leahy, Deputy Health Officer at our Health Department here. So, thank you very much for the invite to present in front of you in regular session. We were here in study session January 22nd of 25, so this was a potential next step that we had anticipated. Little late addition to the agenda, so thank you to Brent, and we do have some team members back at the department that were able to spin up some preliminary budget and stuff for us, so thank you for everyone for kind of prioritizing this for us. So in regular session here, I felt it pertinent to go over kind of a quick overview of how we got here, as well as I really want to clarify what today is set to do. Today we're looking to potentially set a process forward for us to kind of march down some very detailed steps. But today wouldn't be a vote to adopt or approve any regulation in the county. We're going to lay those steps out here for you on slide 3 here, but I just wanted to provide that clarification. So I'll jump into it a little bit here. So just timeline, it's a new year, new look to the board. So in July of 24, we presented at the BOC study session on updates of the statewide sanitary code and the implications it would have on our local county here in Grand Traverse. 10-2, in a regular session, a motion was made to create an ad hoc committee. And that ad hoc committee then met 3 times over the course of 24, right at the end of the year there. And that final ad hoc committee had produced the renderings of a draft regulation for the county. That draft regulation went through a few renditions with our legal counsel, and ultimately it was presented in study session for review on the 22nd of January of this year. So, ad hoc. It was a good collaborative experience. I appreciate Mr. Miller's kind words there from Aspire. Here you have the list of participants from ad hoc. So 2 board members, no, 3, excuse me, myself and Mr. Wheat, as well as some townships, East Bay, Long Lake, Watershed Center, Aspire North, a few private industry septic inspectors, pumpers and haulers, and representatives of the various community organizations. And to note, last night, Brent and I did do a presentation at East Bay Township Commission and Planning Commission, so we had a little dress rehearsal there as well last night. So, why we're here, what we're here to potentially review, next steps available to the board here, as well as to the health department. So, Before us, we have a draft regulation that was included in the packet here. And as a health department, the draft is attainable. We're willing to look at future edits if this conversation goes that way today to consider. But what we have in front of us, we think does accomplish some public health concerns and addresses those, as well as is a good balanced approach of stepping into this type of regulation. We did make a few edits since January 22nd of 25. We clarified some things for Board of Health, shall mean the Building Code Board of Appeals for that appeal process within this regulation. It's a detail in there. We added the ordinance, I think it was number 4, right, under the Public Health Code that really dialed into that specific language. So we did update that language in the regulation. We also updated the effective date and changed that from October 1st of 25 to January 1st of 2026. And we can definitely dive into that here into this discussion about why those changes were made. So today, Grand Traverse County Board of Commissioners put in front of them an option to make a motion per the recommendation in the board packet to set a public hearing time, date, location, and give direction to the health department to begin putting that process in place to host a hearing needed to adopt the regulation. So I want to dive into that a little bit here. So we did meet with legal counsel just yesterday. We had a really good conversation about what those steps look like, right? So ultimately, you know, I learned a lot yesterday about the difference between adoption and approval. So first comes that adoption step by the board. The board can do that as a whole board, or the board can make a recommendation to have a committee do that. That committee would review, take public comment, and at that public hearing that is to be scheduled, and then we could either make changes based off that public hearing to incorporate into the regulation, and then that committee or the full board can push it to the full board then for approval. That can all be one meeting, technically. That could be adoption and approval, if you so wish, or they can be broken down into 2 separate meetings. Legal counsel had seen it kind of both ways through the state of Michigan. From there, if approved, we're required to have 45 days, we're required to approve that 45 days prior to the regulation becoming effective, or if specified in the regulation, a later date. So we have that as January 1, 2026. So we have a lot of breathing room there to accomplish that. So, like I said, that public hearing notice, right, that can be a regular session of the Board of Commissioners to be scheduled, or it can be another opportunity that is scheduled and put on the calendar. Ultimately, though, we'll go back to the 10 and 20 rule, right? So notice of that hearing has to be provided no less than 10 days before the public hearing, and no less than 20 days before the adoption of the regulation. Again, that January 1st, 2026 date comes to play there as a benefit, as we're well in advance of that. That notice shall include time and place of the public hearing and a statement of the terms or substance proposed in the regulation. We're advised that it's best to put that in the newspaper, right? So we would have to put that regulation in its entirety likely in the newspaper, as well as some other media outlets, to really get that public facing for the community to have time to review that before that public hearing date. Okay. So just, I added this slide in here for reference on these terms are within the Public Health Code in the Michigan legislature. So there will be some needs to adopting this regulation, right? So this is not, Mr. Wheat here is representative of our Environmental Health Division at our Health Department. This is not currently a program in which we have within the department. Right now, we have programs in place around onsite wastewater that is more permitting based, right? So permitting of new systems going in, or permitting of systems that are existing that have been identified to be failing. But the craft of actually inspecting systems is not something that we currently have a staff member assigned to, nor really some grant funding to support that work. We're primarily a grant-funded department. All of our FTEs are really funded through that grant, as well as our vehicles. So within this, we did put together a preliminary budget, and there is a cost there, right? So to implement this program, roughly, we projected about $179,135, and that's based off 2025. So that may adjust a bit, but our finance director felt comfortable with that. That includes 1 FTE at a loaded rate and 1 full-size vehicle. The health department has identified grant funds and some other revenue funds that could probably support the purchase of that vehicle. So ultimately, there would be an ask within the staffing plan as we prepare for 2026 budget for an FTE. Now, the goal here is to build a program that is supported through fees, grants, and some level of local appropriations. But as we spoke to our partner local health departments, that took a year or 2 to spin up, and after time, it's really a blend of the 3 that sustains these programs. And again, that effective date, January 1, 2026, within the regulation, we reference guidelines. So there is a need to really sit down in a collaborative approach to write those guidelines, work with private industry to understand inspector needs, work with our private industry, Aspire, those type of partners, as well as educating the public about this change. So those guidelines are to be drafted and introduced to the public, made public. A budget request is to be made, right, in the 2026 budget, and then just additional time to educate the community on what those changes are to be come January 1st, 26. I did have a chance to read through Mr. Miller's suggestions that he had emailed us all this morning, and there were some things in there that, yes, we would look to incorporate in terms of tracking these systems, making that information publicly accessible, and then how do you educate the title companies and realtors about this new process that is going to take effect. So all the reasons why some of that date was moved back a bit, but here to answer more questions. And again, here to help with department-wide, just kind of implementation of this. Mr. Wheat is really our subject matter expert, and I'd love to step left and allow him some questions too if you have about very specific details about the language in the regulation. We're here to answer questions and have discussion.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Questions? Commissioner Henschel.
Thanks for your presentation. This morning, the commissioners were emailed and given something from Aspire North. Is this something you've had a chance to look at, their comments on this?
I read it sitting in that chair about
Okay.
7:30, so
Gotcha.
I did a quick review. The first 3 comments made a lot of sense, and then I just wanted to dive into those more. So,
Okay. What do you think should happen before we're ready to actually have a final piece for the county board to vote on?
I think we're very close in the language here. I'd be open to another draft if need be to incorporate some of these things. I'm also open to having some of that language within the guidelines as well that we can update in time, right, as a department while we identify the needs, working with our partner agencies and keeping some of that out of the regulation so we don't have to come back to the full board every single time we want to make an adjustment about changing the public-facing portal or whatever it may be. But in terms of the approach to inspections, the criteria around them, dates within the regulation, we're pretty set on that. But if there's any major flags thrown here that we want to really consider adjustments into that language, willing to consider them. But, yeah.
I, personally would like to give some good attention to the Aspire North suggestions here and see what of these items could be incorporated. There's a lot of professionals that are very important in our community that have come together to give us these suggestions. We should give very serious consideration. On another note, kind of aside from this policy, but on the same vein of protecting our lakes, streams, and clean rivers we have in our county, earlier, well, actually the end of last year, I had reached out to the health department for records on on-site septic. And I know you're familiar with this, so I'm just sharing for everybody. For 4 different properties, and 2 of them, there was no records found. And what little deeper digging, we discovered that there had been property splits, and new tax ID or property numbers had been given to parcels, and the on-site septic system was associated with the old property ID. Are we doing anything, which we finally did get all that cleared up, and I really appreciate the staff at the Environmental Health Department, but are we doing anything to kind of change how we're doing property searches or keeping records so that perhaps looking at a property's mailing address would give us the records that people are requesting?
So I think the idea of this regulation is to begin that process of building out a database that really helps us locate and identify where exactly septic systems are. And so that'll be more of a cloud-based, GIS-based software. So with this regulation and the 300 feet from water, it'll help us to build out that database with some software where an inspector goes out, identifies where that is, comes back to us, and we're able to load that information into that software so that it's there forever. So when we do search your address or your parcel ID, we can visually see where that septic system is laid out on that property. And if we don't have records, then we won't have that.
Well, I'm just wondering, there's probably traction here. We'll come up with something that'll probably pass. But if it didn't pass, should we not also take efforts to improve our record keeping, even with us totally aside from this particular ordinance? And is there anything, us as the purse of the county, the Board of Commissioners, is there anything you need from us to get these environmental records up to date and readily searchable for people that are doing environmental work?
Yeah, so a handful of years ago when I took over as director, we purchased a software called Laserfish. A lot of you have utilized that software, right? It's a public-facing search for our records. Before that, our records were housed in file cabinets, basically. So, we could search by Peninsula Township, parcel ID number, go and pull the file out, physically scan it. Now, all of those records have been scanned, and they're searchable by PDF. Now, what Commissioner Henschel notes is that sometimes parcels are combined, and that complicates the process, right? So there is software out there that we've been looking at purchasing and utilizing, obviously to backlog and enter all of that into that software would be a big lift because we'd still have to go parcel by parcel and identify those dimensions and attach them to that dwelling or some other dimension property corner.
In closing for my comments, I want to voice my support for going that extra mile, and if it means, adding a position or contracting with someone, and I understand it's a big lift,
yeah.
But it is, I think, very important to have updated records for when people are working with our county's environment, because it's very important to our constituents.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Commissioner Walter.
I think Mr. Wheat, he's a very hard worker, so he undersells himself sometimes. So not to spoil the conclusion for budget 2026 from our perspective, but I've been convincing him for a long time that he's understaffed in the environmental health division within the EH program. So we are looking at that for budget 26. Outside of this work here, we have the grant dollars to potentially fund another position, because when you walk into that office a month from now through the fall, they're all out in the field, and I will catch Mr. Wheat at his desk helping a sanitarian put a permit together And we really need to be looking at that comprehensive approach across the entire county, whether this passes or not, making much more of this information public-facing so that we can access that information in real time, to your point. And then to clarify your first question, my understanding of the process is that even if this board makes a motion to push this forward today, that is why it may be important to separate the adoption and the approval process, because the adoption process is where we may take public comments and those notes from Aspire, right, and incorporate them into the language, make some adjustments, and then set forth a future date in which that language would be approved by the full board. So there is a step in between there that will allow for some of that work to be done.
Commissioner Walter.
Thank you. So part of it, you had in your ad hoc some of the private septic companies who participated, and the proposal is to kind of lean into those private relationships to actually do the inspections. Is that correct? And there's an estimate of a couple hundred a year, or 300 or something like that. And
Yeah, it's about 200 to 400.
Yeah,
The
okay.
number's not exact just because of, if we look at 100% transfers, it's about 400. If we look at only, sales to other owners, it's about 200. So, yeah, we did have one inspection company in there. He's the primary inspector for most of the reviews that we see come into Grand Traverse County. There are not a lot out there right now. And so part of this not looking at a regulation that encompasses all of Grand Traverse County right now is because we don't really have that infrastructure of third-party inspectors to do that work. So hopefully this will help kind of create a niche, business opportunity for lots of people in the community.
yeah, so that's the follow-up then is the people who did participate, or it sounds like one company anyway, is the primary company right now who does that kind of work. So do they feel like they have capacity to take on 400, as we, going into 2026, because this wouldn't start then, and do they feel like this time frame is enough to ramp up and add on staff or whatever they need to do?
Yeah, I didn't hear him voice really any
Okay.
concerns.
You see.
Commissioner Andrews and Commissioner Henschel was there.
I heard him say, bring it,
Yeah, that's kind of what I heard too.
Okay.
right?
Well, I just don't want to set it up for failure and not have it, so I wanted to confirm that they were happy with that amount
Yeah,
of work.
absolutely. And that's
Okay.
why we're not looking at doing like a county-wide, because I don't think that we could,
But that amount is good to start with
I
for
think
them.
that's a good starting point.
Andrews.
I just want to echo and support Commissioner Henschel's statement about the missing records. We know that one of the most at-risk groups of septic systems are those that we have no records for. Because we don't have any records for them, we don't know what their condition is, how old they are, if they're big enough. And so I urge, and we have talked about this, I think, in our July study session a year ago, we need to fill that gap. We need to find a way to identify those systems and bring them into a searchable, identifiable, and then hopefully healthy and functional condition. So I'm going to support that we find in parallel to inspections, moving that forward, whether it's a temporary RFP to get somebody to help us do that, whether that's something you need support from, but we can't have, I think you said there might be as many as 3,000 to 5,000 systems that in our county that we don't have records for, and that's a problem. So I just want to go on the record.
But it sounds like you have some grant funding identified to potentially fill a new position that could help make some headway with that?
Yes, so we do have grant funds that we've identified for, and it's grant and fee-based a bit within the Environmental Health Division. So to look at a 2026 FTE outside the scope of this to kind of lighten the load of some of the sanitarian work so that we can begin to take a step back and get out of the field a little bit and do some of this big picture work, as well as grant funds. We sat through a presentation late last year from a third party that does a really great job of mapping these systems out and putting them into a public-facing portal that a lot of our other local health departments are currently utilizing. So, again, I'm really honing in here on doing more of a balanced approach here, right? So that whether this, as regard to this proposed regulation, that does go into, it kind of did feed into the 300 feet number when we talked about that, right? About biting off something that is attainable, that begins to build a comprehensive program that doesn't just start hammering a bunch of regulations through the door, but allowing us to actually put a program in place that is efficient, that gets what is needed, and also then does the work that you all just discussed there. So it's a step.
Commissioner Spence?
Yeah, thank you. So these 400 transfers and these 200 sales annually, are those, do they meet the criteria of being within 300 feet?
Yes, we worked with the Equalization Department. They did an awesome job supplying us with all the different renditions of numbers we were asking for through 2024. And to the best of our knowledge, I mean, it encompasses dwellings located within that 300 feet.
Okay. And so if it were contracted out to private contractors, they couldn't meet this need, and that's what the ask for the full-time employee in the vehicle is for?
No, that would be for the review process. So inspections are done, we review them in-house. If it's a pass, right? It's easy. It's signed off on. If it's a fail, then us as the health department will go in the field and back that work up with test holes and possibly with that inspection company
I
on
understand.
site.
Okay, thank you. And then one last thing. This position of having septic tanks inspected, I'm wondering if, or this, what we're talking about, I wonder if there's some way we could look at stormwater drains in addition to it. I know that they're two totally different things, but that's an area that it would be nice if we could tie them together in some way, like if there isn't enough capacity to, if there's such a need to have like septic tanks inspected, if they could add on that.
Yeah, I think that would
duty
fall under
too.
the drain commissioner.
Drain commissioner?
Yeah.
Well,
Yep.
that's actually an MS4 issue that we'll get letters any day now identifying which of our municipalities, the county, parks, school departments, NMC, and probably others are going to be subject to MS4 now that we've reached that threshold. And so I think that's another headache coming or
yeah.
opportunity for
Although
collaboration.
different, I feel like there's a great need there too, so, okay.
There
that's
unquestionably is.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions?
I'm going to make the motion. I'm going to support a two-step approach on this. I think it makes the most sense that, as I understand it, allows input into the actual language before it's adopted to be considered. And I'm sure besides Aspire North, there may be others who have additional potential input. The purpose of the public hearing, as I understand it, would be to take that input into consideration. So,
Motion to adopt then?
so it's going to be a motion to adopt the resolution as presented with the edit that with the clarification that we proceed in a two-step process. And if that's sufficient,
I'll second.
Do we need to set any of those other time, date, location, or can we just start with adoption and have
So-
staff figure out? the
Yeah,
next piece?
clarification point there really quick. In the two-step process, the first process of setting a public hearing, and then that adoption process, that may either be the full board or a subset committee that the board identifies. So it may be helpful to,
I'm open to discussion, but I think this is an issue of interest to the whole board, and I would recommend that we move forward as a whole board instead of a
I
subcommittee.
agree.
okay,
I was assuming that was what we were doing when you made that motion.
thank you. Yes.
Any more discussion?
So, well, clarification, we don't need to set the other pieces and staff can set the time, date, and location for those pieces? It does say that in the
We,
recommendation that we need.
we can do that as the department. I defer to you all making that motion if you wanted that to be a regular session meeting.
So I'm looking at the resolution, which is far more detailed than what was in the recommendation. And I understand it directs the staff to figure out the date of those processes, as opposed to us setting the dates.
We will have involvement in that.
Of course it will.
We'll work with administration and you all on setting that.
But
Yep.
yeah, a regular meeting time would be
Yep.
fine.
All right, no further discussion. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen, very much.
Thank you very much for the time.
All right, on to 11, new business. Nope. 12, Commissioner Department reports. Anybody? Sure, we'll start at your end, Commissioner Henschel.
Sure. I apologize, I missed our last meeting. I had a last-minute issue at work and had to run cash register. So if this was covered, I apologize. The MTA meeting, there was a motion that passed unanimously by East Bay Township Supervisor Beth Friend, requesting the county, and this is all of our local townships that are our partners and in a sense our customers, requesting that the county board have a uniform process in place for considering financial aid to townships. Was that mentioned at the last meeting?
It was not, but
Okay.
I saw that as well.
Okay. So I want to read it just for the county boards, and I know it's
Please
something
do.
we've talked about, and I think we pretty much all want, but just so we know, the townships have chimed in and asked, Beth Friend asked if the association chapter would be interested in recommending to the county board that a uniform process be put into place for requesting financial assistance from the county board. When County Administrator Nate Alger spoke to the chapter last year, he indicated that there would be a process in place after the 1st of 2025. Not sure if that's accurate, but still there is no process in place, and the board continues to fulfill requests without a uniform process in place. After discussion from the members, Friend moved that the Grand Traverse chapter of the Michigan Township Association request that the County Board of Commissioners put a uniform ranking process in place to evaluate and fulfill financial requests in time for the drafting of fiscal year 26 budgets. Seconded by Lyle, carried. President Lemkool and Vice President Friend will draft the request to be sent to the BOC. I would expect that to be coming soon.
In response to that, that's exactly what we have set forth, a committee for marijuana dollars and opioid funds to come up with a procedure and a process where we can actually review those things and do that. So where are we at with that, fellow commissioners that are on that board?
It's a scheduled meeting for next week.
Yes.
Monday the 24th.
Fantastic.
And on the note
Ask
of-
and ye shall receive.
On the note of the ethics policy, at the same meeting, Commissioner Nelson did win a $15 Home Depot gift card in the door prize drawing. So
You know, and I
you just got
forgot
to
about
disclose that conflict.
I think it's in my pocket, and I'm gonna go spend that today.
Fantastic. Commissioner McAllister, you got anything?
Nope, not at this time.
Commissioner Flynn?
It's been quiet. I'm all set.
Commissioner Spence?
Same here. Nothing.
Commissioner Morris?
Northern Lakes meeting tomorrow, and Grayling at 1 o'clock. That's all I
Big
have.
fun. Commissioner Nelson?
Nothing.
Mr. Walter?
I want to go back to Commissioner Henschel's report about the MTA asking about financial aid to townships. Can you clarify, is that what they're talking about? Is requesting, sorry, Lloyd, requesting financial aid from the county regarding those funds? Or is this something else? I've never heard of this.
I'll let Commissioner Nelson clarify.
I was at the meeting, and they're frustrated as a group that people are coming to the board and are getting funds when they've been asked to be good soldiers and hang on and wait because there's a process coming, but yet other groups are coming in here and getting funds and they're not getting those funds when they have projects and things that they'd like to work on, but they've been told to wait, but yet the board is awarding to multiple groups without a process, and so they're very interested in having a process so they can follow the rules and come before this board requesting funds and support.
But many of those municipalities receive their own cannabis and opioid funds, so feels like I'm confused on that.
Well, some examples would be Civic Center South, we do allocations to. We've done an allocation to Peninsula Township for parks. We had a big social program come in at the last meeting that was approved. It was a large amount of money. And for a long time, people have been suggesting, and I know people here have been on both sides of that issue, depending on whether they're for the funding or not. That seems to be a sticking point. Like, if I don't think this is a good idea, I think we need a process. But if I think it's a good idea, I don't think we need a better process. There's just been a lot of allocations that are kind of maybe scope creep. Maybe we're, not generally part of what the main purpose of our government is. And yet we just dealt with, we have an issue in environmental health with record keeping that isn't dealt with. Maybe those funding, needs to be focused there, where we can take care of business at home in the, our core business of what we do, like record keeping. And, the process might reveal that, hey, what are our main objectives? What are we trying to accomplish? And are we doing that with these tax dollars? So.
Commissioner Nelson, go ahead.
This was coming on the heels of a $400,000 general fund appropriation, and that's what was frustrating to them because, they want to be a part of that and they want to follow the rules, but there are no rules, but yet it's happening, so.
Well, in deference to that, I know I've had conversations with Mrs. Friend about this a couple of years ago when we gave money to Civic Center South, and as a process, and they've been very patient. It's not just about this one thing, and I agree there needs to be a process. We're not a money tree, but in the last forever, it seems like we pick winners and losers just because how we feel. Very succinctly put, Commissioner Henschel, I appreciate that, and we need to stop doing that. But from my own perspective is government should be doing for people what they can't do, not what they won't do. So if you're unwilling to help pay for paving a road, it's kind of disingenuous to come and say the county's not giving us any money. So, Commissioner Andrews.
Just to chime in, I think $18 million was distributed that included a large amount of money for multiple municipalities to obtain funding. It's not like they've been left out from my perspective. That's not my report, though. I just wanted to share a couple of comments. One, the Pavilions is undertaking a search for a new administrator, CEO position that is moving forward after Mr. Badalski left in December. Hopefully that will have a new person at the helm at the Pavilions by the end of April, I think is probably the most realistic timeline at this point, which is unfortunate for that organization that's been in turmoil and was finally getting its feet under it. The second issue I just wanted to make my fellow commissioners and anybody else who's listening aware of, harm reduction has naloxone boxes. They're old newspaper boxes that are recycled and turned into a spot where you can get those kits for free, no questions asked, and keep them and share them with family members and friends who may be unwilling to ask for them or know to keep them handy given stigma associated with overdose. But they are looking for more places to put those boxes, especially outside of the city. So far, Green Lake has one in front of the fire rescue. East Bay has one at the Township Hall. Garfield has one at the Munson Behavioral Health Center and at the dentistry office up there. And then Whitewater has one at the Acme Christian thrift store. Other communities who want those boxes, who can think of churches and public buildings and other places that people go and might grab one of those boxes and save a life. Think about that, and please let harm reduction know.
Just to follow up real quick, besides the stigma, it's always great to have it on you no matter what. I take one to public events just in case someone around. I send one with my daughter to college just in case something happens at an event or in her own apartment or dorm. So it's really important that those are accessible and handy for anyone.
Sweet. So I really don't have anything to say in regards to reports. However, it's going to.
Sorry, I just wanted to dovetail off something Commissioner Andrews said about the pavilions, because we put a lot of work. Commissioner Andrews, Commissioner Nelson, and myself have spent a year meeting, better than a year, meeting with the staff, the administrative staff over there, and just asking questions, because the county board owns it but doesn't run it. So just asking good questions, and we saw a lot of progress. My father's been at the pavilions for about 3 weeks now, and he raves about, every time I'm there, he talks about how good the food is, just amazing food. And he talks about how wonderful the staff is. So I want to give a shout out to the pavilions and everyone who's worked hard to steer that ship around. And I know that they have a little more administrative turmoil. One more thing is all we needed, but the ship's going in the right direction. And I think we've made great progress. And I want to thank all the county board members who've supported that committee and our work and just asking questions and monitoring and reporting. So the census numbers are still holding. It's still financially viable. It's in the black. Things are going good at the pavilions, despite the loss of the administrator. Thank you.
Concur. Yep. Thank you.
As do I. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. They are definitely heading in the right direction. All right, so second public comment. Please.
My name's Tony Ansorgi. I did send an email out to the commissioners, and I got to apologize to Commissioner Henschel because he didn't get it. It was bounced back to me, and I forwarded it on to the administrator to figure out why he's not getting his emails, but I apologize to you. I should have done it sooner. So it's something to look into. And, who knows why, but I sent you the complete error listings, and somebody should be able to figure that out.
Yeah, we've opened a ticket.
Okay. I'm not going to repeat my email because everybody got it but you'll get it eventually. I'll give you a copy here after the meeting.
Thank you.
But I don't want this
I got
group
sent
to think moving forward with the health department proposal that you're going to improve the health of our citizens. This group of people, the sanitarians, our inspection people, the plumbers, the excavators, they do a yeoman's effort in establishing septic fields, and they are successful. And I don't want because no one is getting sick from septic systems in the state of Michigan. There was one case, one instance in the last 50 years. And how do we know that? Because it was required reporting from all the health officials, his department, doctors, hospitals, any health providers are required to report any waterborne diseases to the state. And how do I know that? Because the state aggregates information to the EPA that I don't get to see the details on all the private information, the individuals involved or anything like that. But the EPA rolls it up together, and anybody can look it up. There are very, very, very few cases of people getting sick from septic systems. And, I will never say anything bad about these people that enforce these regulations because they are really the true unsung heroes out here. They prevent more disease than any doctors or vaccines or anything else. So, I encourage people to look at that email that I sent you just for a different perspective because these guys really are doing a good job. Now, we can debate on what level of money should be spent to do that job. My point is they are already doing a fantastic job. So if you want to throw a whole bunch of money out there, it's not just the head count for him, but all that money that the people selling houses have to spend to get the inspection done too. You can throw that money out there, but you're not going to improve the track record that these people are already doing. That's all I got to say.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, so 14A, upcoming ending terms and county boards and committees. So typically we do an ad hoc committee for interviews and stuff like that. This has been posted yet, the vacancies?
This actually, the item is to just inform that we are going out for applications for those positions. But yes, that would be your determination at a later date.
All right, so I got people in mind, so we'll talk about it later, I guess. All right, closed session.
Can you clarify what is the deadline? I think you've, it's February 28th, and those boards are, Building Code, Board of
Appeals.
Appeals, Hospital Finance, and
Northern Lakes.
Is the Hospital Finance in addition to the treasurer?
Can I clarify? The hospital finance should not be listed here. That is specifically an appointment by the chairman and approved by the board. It's not something that requires interviews. The chairman just picks whoever he wants in the entire county, and we say yes or no. That's it. If he wants a process, he's welcome to it because it's his call, but he doesn't have to go through interview process.
That's fine, let it stay where it's at. But that's not to mean that I'm not gonna follow your advice.
Pick whoever you want.
Sorry, that means we're gonna let it stand the way that it is, but it doesn't mean I'm not gonna follow Commissioner Henschel's suggestion. Commissioner Walter.
What are the requirements for the Northern Lakes Community Mental Health Authority opening? Is that, can
Consumer.
somebody speak to what else is?
Yeah, there's different types of seats on that board.
There's different seats, is that a?
There are direct appointments, and then there are some appointments that require you be eligible by criteria.
Right,
whether you
so
are a
what is that
user.
opening?
I think it's just a regular appointment.
My understanding as well.
Yeah, just a regular appointment.
And is
I think,
there
like, we've
somebody's
already-
term
We've already
ending,
filled
or-
our.
Yes.
I believe it's Mary Maroy's term
Consumer.
is
Correct,
up.
that is Mary Murray's
Okay.
terms ending.
And perhaps Tony Lenti, maybe.
Oh, okay.
So there's 2 openings?
I think so.
It's not Tony's position, though.
Say what?
It's not Tony's, we'll have to ask Lisa, but they are general appointments. They're not
Right.
user-based criteria.
Correct.
Fantastic. Well, let's get to the closed session, shall we?
Need a vote?
Take a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move to go into closed session to consult with the attorney regarding a trial or settlement strategy in connection with the Beta versus Grand Traverse in Leelanau County's case number 24-36928-CZ, because an open meeting would have a detrimental financial effect on the litigation or settlement position of the public body as permitted by MCL 15.2681E.
Second.
Sweet. Motion by Hensel, support by Nelson. Roll call vote?
Henschel?
Yes.
Nelson?
Yes.
Andrews?
Yes.
Morris?
Yes.
McAllister?
Yes.
Flynn?
Yes.
Walter?
Yes.
Spence?
Yes.
Seifert?
Yes. Sweet. See you all there.
Where?
And, I don't know, follow Nate. need a vote to come back into open session. Thank you.
Once and I use it every so. Move to come out of closed session.
Second.
Sweet. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Now what do we need to do? Nothing? Adjourn. We're adjourned. Love you people. You're doing a great job.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.